सगाई
सबसे ऊंची प्रेम सगाई
सबसे ऊंची प्रेम सगाई
सबसे ऊंची प्रेम सगाई
ओ हरे रामा
रामा
हरे रामा
रामा
रामा रामा
रामा
हरे हरे
ओ हरे रामा हरे रामा 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा
कृष्णा
हरे कृष्णा
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 हरे हरे
ओ हरे
कृष्णा
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे
ओ हरे रामा
रामा
हरे रामा
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 हरे हरे
ओ हरे रामा हरे रामा 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 हरे हरे
ओ हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा
कृष्णा
कृष्णा कृष्णा
कृष्णा
हरे हरे हो
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे
हरे रामा हरे रामा
रामा
रामा रामा
रामा
हरे हरे हो
हरे रामा हरे रामा 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 हरे हरे
ओ हरे कृष्णा
कृष्णा
हरे कृष्णा
कृष्णा
कृष्णा कृष्णा
कृष्णा
हरे हरे हो
ओ हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे
ओ जय माँ गंगे
गंगे
जय माँ गंगे
गंगे
जय माँ गंगे
गंगे
जय माँ गंगे ओ
जय माँ जय माँ गंगे
जय माँ गंगे
गंगे
जय माँ गंगे
गंगे
जय माँ गंगे
गंगे
जय माँ गंगे हो
जय माँ गंगे जय माँ गंगे जय माँ गंगे जय माँ गंगे
ओ हर हर गंगे हर हर गंगे
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 हर हर गंगे ओ
हर हर गंगे हर हर गंगे हर हर गंगे हर हर गंगे
गंगे माँ
गंगे माँ
गंगे माँ
गंगे माँ
गंगे माँ
गंगे माँ
आंख बंद करके झूमते हुए गाइए
गंगे माँ
गंगे माँ बोले सर्वेश्वर भगवान की
जय,
गंगा मैया
की जय,
भारत माता
की जय,
धरती माता
की जय,
हर
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 महादेव। ओम जय गंगे माता मैया, जय गंगे माता, जो नर तुमको ध्याता, जो नर मैया जी को ध्याता, मन वांछित फल पाता।
ओम जय गंगे माता।
चंद्र सी ज्योत तुम्हारी, जल निर्मल आता, मैया जल निर्मल आता। शरण पड़े जो तेरे, शरण पड़े जो तेरे, सो नर तर जाता। ओम जय गंगे माता। एक ही बार जो तेरी शरणागति आता, मैया शरणागति आता। यम के ध्यास मिटा कर, यम के कष्ट मिटा कर, परम गति पाता। ओम जय गंगे माता। मंगलकारी मैया तू है सुखदाता, मैया तू है सुखदाता। तेरी गोद में आकर, तेरी शरण में आकर, मन शांति पाता। ओम जय गंगे माता। आरती मात तुम्हारी, जो जननित गाता, मैया प्रेम सहित गाता। दास वही असज में, भक्त वही असज में, मुक्ति को पाता। ओम जय गंगे माता। ओम जय गंगे माता मैया, जय गंगे माता। जो नर तुमको ध्याता, जो नर मैया जी को ध्याता, मन वांछित फल पाता। ओम जय गंगे माता, जय गंगे माता, जय गंगे माता।
Between sannyas and karma yoga and bhakti yoga, I would say all of them. Now, you don't necessarily need to jump into all of them this moment, but here's why. Bhakti yoga, devotion, love. Easiest way to connect. Love God. Love God in form, love God without form, love God in the form of the tree in your backyard. It doesn't matter. But just love. The energy of love, when it runs through your body, is transformational. That which we become do, manifest, due to the power of love, is more than we do due to the power of anything else. There's no other power in the world that is responsible for what the power of love is responsible for. So definitely you need bhakti. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you must sit and perform puja for an hour a day. I'm not saying that. That's the ritual. The point of the ritual is to make us love God. But as you know in your own relationships, if someone really loves you, but they're not bringing you flowers, that's okay, because you know they really love you. The flowers only become important when you start to wonder, does he still love me? And then you start to realize, my God, it's been like a year since he's brought me any flowers. Oh my God, maybe he doesn't love me. But if the love is flowing and you're feeling the love every day, you're not wondering, where are the flowers? And if somebody brings you flowers or sends you flowers, but you know they're just to buy you in some way, they've really messed up, they don't want to get in trouble, maybe you're their boss, some flowers, it's not going to impact you because you know this isn't sent with love, this is just sent to try to buy me. In the same way with God. That which we offer in our puja, we offer it to bring us closer to God. If you're performing puja without love, it's better leave the flowers on the trees, leave the milk in the cows, give it to some poor person. God doesn't need that from us. The rituals are there to bring up within us an experience of love. In the same way you're cooking a meal for a loved one, well, as you're cooking it, the whole act of cooking it, love is growing in you as you're cooking. Oh, he likes a little bit of spice. Okay, so I'm going to put in just the right amount, maybe a little more. He really likes spice. Okay, just one more chili. Right? And the whole act of cooking brings you closer and closer to love. Or you're painting a picture for someone you love. Every stroke of that painting brings up more and more love for you. So have bhakti, but don't worry if it's not I sit in puja. That's okay. But make sure you love God. And make sure that there's some expression of your love to God. Even if it's just, I love you, God. Really, that's enough. Pujya Swamiji tells a beautiful story of a young boy in temple. And it's time for the silent prayer. And everybody becomes quiet, everybody closes their eyes, and the boy says to God, he says, God, I don't know any prayer. He says, the only thing I know by heart is my ABCs. Because I learned that in school. He says, I know those by heart. And he said, but I know one thing, which is all the prayers come out of these ABCs. And so I'll tell you what, I'm just going to sing you the ABCs and you make up whatever prayer you like. And whenever Pujya Swamiji tells that story, he always concludes it by saying, the point of the story is, God loves that boy much more for his ABCs than all of the people who are chanting perfect mantras or prayers, but while their minds are making shopping lists. So it's all about the love. So have bhakti. Karma yoga. You have to have it. Now, karma yoga, usually when we talk about it in this context, we mean service, we mean seva, we mean doing good deeds. Well, when you love someone, you can't really say you love them very much if you refuse to do anything for them. Right? I mean, if you had a loved one who kept telling you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, and you're really sick one day and you say, could you bring me a glass of water? They say, nope. I just do the loving, I don't do this with the work. Only bhakti, no karma. You'd be like, Hari, well, what kind of love is this? I need a glass of water. What do you mean you won't bring me a glass of water? How can you possibly love me and refuse to bring me a glass of water? So karma yoga stems out of love for God. And again, it doesn't matter whether we're loving God in a specific form or whether we love the creation. We serve because the creation is, there's two ways to do it. Either the creation is God, and I love God so I serve, or the creation is me. Because my consciousness is expanded to such an extent through my practice of meditation, through my spiritual awareness, that I actually recognize myself, my capital S, full, high, complete self in the others. And so I serve the same way that I scratch my nose when it itches, or I limp when one of my legs is hurt, or I do anything else for myself. Well, when my sense of self expands, I serve. Lastly, sannyas. Well, sannyas is certainly not a requirement on any level. To be taken early in life. The scriptures and the teachings are full of householder sages and rishis, sages. If you read the stories in the scriptures, there's very few sannyasis. It's much more householder rishis, householder saints. But as our life goes on, right, we're given in the Hindu tradition, there's a sense of 4 what we call ashrams, 4 stages of life that are prescribed for everyone. First stage is your student years, brahmacharya ashram. Your second stage is your marriage and childbearing and career and whatnot, grihastha stage. Then the kids are now grown, they're settled. Vanprasthashram stage, you start being able to pull away. You no longer need to be changing diapers and bringing home the bread. And Vanprasthashram stage, you start to move away. And then ultimately the stage of sannyas, which is that final stage in that way of going back to God, of literally unencumbering ourselves from the world so that we can be one with God. But of course, there's many of us who choose to skip around and take sannyas earlier. But there's no requirement for that. You can practice bhakti and karma yoga, and you should practice them in every stage. And then, if you feel inspired, called to move into the sannyas ashram at a younger age, fantastic. If you don't, at least be sure that you get into it at the appropriate age of that final stage of life. You don't want to go out kicking and screaming. of attachment to the world. So that's where the Vanprast and Sannyas stages come in, is look, you're going out. Rather than going out kicking and screaming and digging your fingernails futilely into the world, go out in a way that you're planning already your next destination. How can I use those years to already be planning? Because our next birth is based on where I was at the end of this one. So if I go out kicking and screaming, I'm going to have a very different experience in my next birth than if I go out immersed in God. We're all doing the very best that we can. Nobody wakes up any morning and says, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to hurt that person. I'm going to plot it. I'm going to plan it. And I'm going to hurt them. When we hurt people, we hurt them because in that moment, in that situation, in that circumstance, my toolbox didn't have in it what the situation required. So maybe the situation required patience, but my toolbox didn't have patience. Because in my life up to that point, my sanskaras, my history, my family, my childhood, whatever it may be, because we all develop toolboxes of how we move through the world. What we have in order to be able to address the situations that the world gives us. Do we have patience? Do we have compassion? Do we have forgiveness? Do we have courage? Do we have strength? Do we have truthfulness? And if the situation that arises is one for which I don't have a tool, I'm going to do the best I can with the tools I have, but a lot of times it's not very skillful. You know, if you see a nail sticking out of a wall, but you don't have a hammer, and all you've got is a toothbrush, you're going to whack the hammer unskillfully. And if you are that nail, you're going to whack the nail unskillfully. And if you are that nail, and you know that what you needed was a hammer, you're going to wonder why. Why is this toothbrush whacking me all over the place and making me go sideways and shoving me into the wall and on my back? And in the same way in our lives, a lot of times, instead of having patience, instead of having compassion, instead of having understanding, what we've got is fear. What we've got is impatience. What we've got is anger. What we've got is confusion. What we've got is longing. What we've got is sadness. What we've got is a grudge. And those become the things that we use to navigate our way through the world. And we hurt people. And this, by the way, of course, is the same reason people hurt us. And so the teaching on guilt begins very similarly to the teaching on forgiveness. It's the awareness that we're all doing our best. Now, if it's you who has done it, the first piece is to understand that you're not a bad person, presumably. You didn't wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to hurt that person. That in you, there was fear, there was confusion, there was desire, there was ignorance, there was longing. There was darkness. When we talk about light, In the Indian spiritual tradition, the light that we talk about is a light of wisdom, a light of truth that burns through a darkness of ignorance. It's not a darkness of the self. The darkness is a darkness of ignorance. So I was ignorant in that moment. I didn't have the wisdom to give that situation what it required. Okay. So you forgive yourself. But we also have injured others in the world. There's a beautiful story of a kid who had a horrible temper tantrum. And his father tried to calm him down and explain to him not to have temper tantrums. And the kid just kept having temper tantrums after temper tantrums. And finally, the father said, okay. He said, from now on, every time you get angry, every time you throw a temper tantrum, after that, you've got to go out and hammer a nail into the wooden fence in our backyard. And so this kid went out every day, sometimes several times a day, and he ended up having to hammer nails into the wooden fence every time he got angry, every time he lost his temper. And at the end of the month, the father said to him, okay, now go out there and pull all the nails out of the wooden fence. And he did. And the father said, now look at the fence. And of course the fence was full of holes, badly weakened. And his father said to him, you know, you get over your anger. You have a temper tantrum, you think you're done with it, the world should move on. But you look at those holes that your nails have left in that fence. Even after you've pulled it out, that fence will never be the same. And the people in the world you are hurting may never be the same. That which you're doing in your anger is like driving nails into that fence. And so we have to also realize that there are amends to be made. If I've hurt someone, even though I know I didn't do it purposely, I know that I didn't do it out of malice, I know that I didn't wake up in the morning and say, I know I'm going to hurt that person. Yes, it was out of ignorance. The big umbrella of ignorance. It includes my ego, and it includes my fears, and it includes my desires. And it includes my attachments and expectations and my grudges and my separation and all of that. In that ignorance, I have hurt someone. So I have to forgive myself. But I also have to make amends to whatever extent I'm able. We can't always do it, sadly. But we want to make sure that we're not doing the equivalent of going out and committing sins and then thinking, well, I'll just have a bath in Ganga and, make it all better. I actually was somewhere abroad in an event, a function, and one of the other people from India, when we were there, the meal came, and there were some non-vegetarian desserts, and we're obviously all very strict vegetarians, and there were some desserts that were non-vegetarian that had eggs in them. And he said, oh, well, that's okay. I'll just have one and go back and have a bath in Ganga when I get back to India. And I mention that because this isn't the way that we use grace. So as you've hurt someone, we make amends. We learn. And we forgive ourselves, not in a sense of, okay, done, had my bath in Ganga, I'm absolved, now I'll go out and do it again. But in a way in which I realize, look where my ignorance is taking me. Look what's happening. Look what's happening from the darkness in my life that I don't want to let go of. Because that light is always there. It's always there. The possibility of bringing light to your darkness is always there. The sun is always shining. But if we're going to sit metaphorically in our room with the curtains drawn, because we're attached to our darkness. I remember when I first met Pujya Swamiji, we were talking about, I have a background in psychology, and so I was talking something about psychology and history and people's things, and he said to me, he said, you people in the West, he said, you sit around in a dark room and you talk about how long it's been dark and what the darkness feels like and how you feel sitting in that darkness and why it's dark and what the molecules of darkness are made of and how long it's been dark and all of that. And he said, but you're still in the dark. And he said, here in India, we go like this around the walls looking for a light switch. And so I share that with you because when we are living in guilt for things that we've done to ourselves, to others, to the world, due to that darkness of ignorance we live in, that fear, that ego, that separation, that attachment to the body, that attachment to my histories and my identities and whatever it may be, it can get kind of seductive. And we tend to get very attached to it. And so this is what I do. I've hurt people. I keep hurting people. Therefore I don't deserve love. I'm afraid of love. Because I have this darkness. I don't deserve grace. I don't deserve goodness. Because I have this darkness. And it's really important that we give up our addiction to our darkness. And guilt in many ways is our way of holding on to our darkness. It's the guilt that always reminds you, you're bad, you're wrong, you're hurtful, you're ignorant, you're this, you're that. And the guilt just builds this identity around us. And this is why it's so important to let go. So important to forgive. Not in a casual way, but in a way that absolutely commits ourselves to bringing in the light so that we don't do it again. To forgive what we've done. Pujya Swamiji always says, God never opens your old files. You go for any job, they're going to, look at your files. Where have you been? What have you done? Where are your references? He always says, God never opens your old files. So we go to God. In any name, any form, whatever religion you come from, it doesn't matter. Any concept of the divine. And we surrender. Whatever the darkness was that made us do it. And then, from a place of light, not darkness, not I'm a bad person, that's why I'm making amends, I'm coming back, I'm on my hands and knees, I'm so sorry, I'm such a horrible person, I've hurt you. No. From a place of light, a place of awareness that I'm full, but in that moment, there was a tool that the situation required I didn't have. I responded in ignorance. It was wrong. Whatever we need to do to make it better, we do. And we move on in freedom. Because ultimately freedom is the highest goal. I mean, that's why we're on a spiritual path. It's not enlightenment for enlightenment's sake, moksha for moksha's sake. peace for peace. It's about freedom. Freedom from. The word moksha, literally freedom. Mukti, freedom. These are the definitions of the word. But it gets misunderstood as freedom from the body. I'll die, then I'll be free. No. You'll just get another body. The freedom comes in the body. But it's freedom from the darkness of my mind. And so everything that I'm doing, and again, remember, the darkness is not badness, not evilness, darkness of just the ignorance. The mind that says you are your history. You are what has happened to you. You are where you've been. You are what you look like. You are what you can do. You are your emotions. That darkness, that's what keeps us stuck. Because that's the fertile ground in which depression and misery and jealousy and competition and self-hatred and anger, I mean, all of the stuff that really is a vice on our hearts and our lives, it all grows in that fertile ground of this is you. Whatever has happened to you, wherever you've been, what you look like, how much money you make, what you've done, what's been done to you, that is you. That darkness of ignorance that the mind casts a veil over us. And that's what we have to be free from, which is why. It's why we forgive others, and it's why we forgive ourselves. Regardless of what we've done, regardless of what others have done to us. Because we deserve to be free. And because a grudge toward another being, anger toward another being, holding on to what someone else has done, keeps me from being free. And guilt over what I've done keeps me from being free. And it keeps me locked into this identity of you are what you did. I remember one time several years ago, Pujya Swamiji and I went to jail. Not taken there as criminals, but we went to visit. I should rephrase that. We went to visit a jail and give a talk to the prisoners. And Pujya Swamiji said something that was so beautiful and has stuck with me all of these years. He said to them, your crime, you're in here identified by your crime. You identify yourself as your crime. He said, but your crime is this much. You are this much. And he said, stop identifying as that much and start identifying as this much. So fortunately, you're not in jail. You're free in the body, but you're in jail in the mind. Allow yourself to get out of the jail of your mind by realizing whatever you've done is this much. You are this much. Do what you can do to make amends. Do what you can do to make sure that you never do it again by bringing in the light. By exposing that within you, the anger, the pain, the longing, the fear, the confusion that caused you to do that. Expose that to the light so it can be healed. And then move on into your freedom. And make sure that all you do is spread love to yourself and to all. absence of thoughts that comes, but it's not permanent. Not for me anyway yet. Should that day come, that would be lovely. But see, here's the thing. Thoughts themselves are not bad. As long as we're not at their mercy, thoughts are wonderful. I can think about people I love. I can feel love. I can think about God and feel love and joy and ecstasy. I can think about projects and plans to benefit people. The mind is actually a wonderful tool. Thoughts are wonderful. The problem is when we are at their mercy. When they're in charge and we're the slave. So with meditation, it's not so much about stopping all thoughts. It's about recognizing that you actually do have control over them. So a thought may come that isn't really very useful. And if you've been meditating for a while, what you notice is, A, you're aware of it very quickly. So it's not that it doesn't come at all, but it's that you can see it from far away. And you're able to see it and recognize it. And then have a different thought instead. So for example, you're driving down the freeway. Somebody cuts you off, right? Initial instinct, idiot. Right? Who the hell do they think they are? My God, are they blind? Don't they see what's happening to our world today? Okay. But if you've been meditating, somebody cuts you off. It's not that your heart doesn't start beating a little fast. It does. There was a survival instinct here. You had to slam on the brakes. There may be that momentary adrenaline rush. There may even be a moment of, my God. But long before you get to what the hell is our world coming to, you've recognized that you've had that reaction. You calm down. And then maybe you decide to substitute it for a different thought. I do this on a personal level. It's a habit I have. I'm a creative writer. I love to tell stories. I love to write stories. Some guys cut me off. Well, one way of thinking about that is he's an idiot. He wasn't paying attention. He's just a symbol of our world that is going down the drain. Nobody cares about anybody anymore. It's all just, every man for himself. So that's one story. Another story is the man just got a phone call that his son was in an accident and is about to die in a hospital. And the doctors have told this guy, if you are not here within the next 3 minutes, you may not see your son alive. Right? So now you see the difference in how you feel inside about this guy who cut you off? Suddenly, on the one hand, he's an idiot. Our world is going to pieces. On the other hand, you're ready to clear traffic for him. Follow him to the hospital. See if you can do something for his son. And I have no idea if that's true. Probably it's not. But it's no less true than the guy's an idiot. And since I'm never going to know what's true because I don't know the guy, and he's zoomed down the highway, I'll never find out who he was. Doesn't matter. What matters is how I feel. And I'd much rather live with thoughts that inspire compassion and love than thoughts that inspire anger. So you're able to see them and not react, not be a puppet, literally. As though your neurochemistry was just pulling your strings and you were going to dance accordingly. Angry now, happy now, lustful now, greedy now. We're not puppets. So it gives you that. And the space that you get between the thoughts, because you do get that, it's just not permanent, as I said, gives you an experience of who you are that stays with you. Even though the thoughts come back, that experience stays with you. And so you know you're not your thoughts. Things tend not to bother you quite as much. So yeah, the thoughts do stop. But the goal is not how to stop them forever. The goal is how to be in control. How to have the thoughts I want to have and not have the thoughts I don't want to have.